It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mainz and Dutz. I'm your host, Mainz, my colleague in the danger zone in Rainford. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Week 1
is upon us, but this isn't our preview show because we're behind schedule. So therefore, this is our final review show. NFC West. After all our plans of many months, Neil, we then had life get in the way. And a 21st birthday, time plus 19, 21 plus 19 birthday that I had. So therefore, we are recording this the 6th of September, a little behind, and we are talking what could be described as the best division in the league, the NFC West tonight.
Indeed, certainly if any division is a group of death, as it were, I think this is as close as we're going to get to one.
Absolutely. Before that, we'll also talk about QB news across the landscape and give some kind of fantasy thoughts related to them and what we believe will go forward in those kind of situations. So, let's get on with it, Neil. Without further ado, let's move on with the show. QB news, Neil. Number of teams named starting QBs since we last were on the show, and I thought it'd be useful to get thoughts. We're reaching the end of fantasy draft season. We had our League of Record draft last night. If you're unsure whether you agree or disagree with the NFL.com's ratings, have said draft Neil is going undefeated in our league. So take that with a pinch of salt. But some people may still be drafting, and based on that, we need to understand what you'll be doing and what your thoughts are around those teams. First team, Neil, the Denver Broncos, who, not surprisingly, given their coach is a defensive coach, has picked Teddy Bridgewater, the safer option. What does the move to Teddy mean for the wide receivers and pass catchers within that team?
I think it means that volume is going to be capped for all concerned, because we know they're going to want to try and run the ball and basically let Teddy do no harm. So we're not going to be seeing deep shots downfield for Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant if he's healthy, or Albert O. I think it's going to be a case of he's going to be getting the ball out of his hands quickly and basically relying on his receivers to make magic by themselves. So if we think that Jerry Jeudy, instead of just being an air yard monster, can be a yak compiler, then it's good news for him. Clearly, I think Jeudy has gone past Cortland Sutton, as Sutton still works his way back from his injury, so Jeudy should be the one in this passing game. But the number of shots downfield he's going to get this year is going to be vastly reduced from last year, where Drew Lock, as we know, just likes to hurl it up and give his players a chance. So it's not going to be massive target volume, but he'll probably be the target. Jerry Jeudy, I'm talking about, obviously, will be the target leader for the Broncos.
Do we expect more running, and does that get Javonte Williams into kind of draft eligibility and someone you should be starting?
Sorry, you cut out. What was that?
I said Javonte Williams. Should we be picking him?
Javonte Williams looks like he's going to be that annoying person that if you draft him now, he's going to be sat on your bench for a few weeks while Melvin Gordon gets the veteran's privilege. But then towards the back end of the season, it'll either be something approaching a timeshare or Javonte will have taken the job. So I don't know. It depends. If you can get him late in drafts, he's someone to say you're going to stash, but he's going to be one of those players that you might be looking at thinking, do I need to usher him off if someone gets injured? I think he's got more upside than Gordon, but I just think at the start of the season, maybe Gordon has the safer floor. So it depends. Do you want to win now, or do you want to gamble and win later?
Let's move on to Jacksonville, Neil. Not surprisingly, picking Trevor Lawrence. But that place looks like shouldn't swear, but I'm going to say shit show anyway. Given that kind of situation, although Lawrence was seen as a generational talent, I assume it's pick Jacksonville Jaguar players at your peril.
Indeed it is. Jacksonville have categorically failed in every respect. In every manner they could have failed this off-season. They had a chance to select a player that many feel is like one of the best quarterback prospects of all time. They do. They've been talking about him for 4 years. And they singularly went out of their way to not make him the face of the franchise. So straight away we had the fact that we had to wait until the week of the third pre-season game for them to announce his starter. So he's been splitting reps with someone you then traded away for a bag of footballs. Your coach decided to do a solid to one of his former players and make Tim Tebow the signature signing of the off-season. So therefore the circus was around Tebow, not Trevor Lawrence. You can maybe make the argument, this is taking pressure off Lawrence. He's the first overall pick. He's been the presumptive first overall pick for 3 years. The pressure's on Lawrence. It doesn't matter. You may as well embrace it and say this. You may as well embrace it and crown him. I mean, for Christ's sake, who Jacksonville had a quarterback while I've been watching the NFL? They had 3 years of Brunell. I think it was 2 years of Leftwich. 5 solid years of Garrard, and then nothing. Well, why not just go a little bit over the top for Trevor Lawrence? No. We'll split your reps with Gardner Minshew, and then we'll trade away Minshew and say, yeah, you won the job. Did you?
It's one of the most underwhelming starts to an NFL number 1 draft pick, who, as you quite rightly pointed out, has been the presumptive number 1 for 4 years I've ever seen. I know he's in Jacksonville, so it's not exactly a media hotbed, but it's not been loud. So yeah, I don't think this is going to be a very good year, and I think Urban Meyer lasts about as long as Steve Spurrier did in Washington.
Yeah, with just as much likability.
Yeah, the old ball coach is kind of likable in college. He just was really bad at his job at Washington because, his job in college, he could go and play golf at 4 o'clock in the afternoon after training. He can't really do that in the NFL.
Fun and gone.
Neil, Chicago Bears, right now, I think they're still picking Andy Dalton, although all views to the contrary suggest it should be Justin Fields. They do play the Rams in week 1, so there is some kind of suggestion that they're basically allowing Aaron Donald to eat Andy Dalton to allow Justin Fields to play afterwards. What does this do for the likes of Allen Robinson that Dalton is the quarterback?
Well, it is fortunate that Aaron Donald is the only elite defensive player in the NFL. So once you've played against him once, you never have to play against him again or go against any other good defensive players. So that's good that Justin Fields gets that out of the way. Oh, hang on, just hearing news that other teams are allowed to have defenders as well. Okay, so the argument is in fact bollocks. It lowers them. I mean, the fact that Andy Dalton is clearly the best quarterback Allen Robinson has ever played with is, when you look closely at that comment, not exactly a glowing endorsement of Andy Dalton. I can understand to an extent if you're worried about Fields playing as a rookie in week 1 against Aaron Donald when your offensive line is a Greek tragedy, which theirs is. So while the line is developing, I mean, I can only assume the good people of Chicago have found the cup of eternal youth and are giving it to Jason Peters, because he hasn't been Jason Peters for 4 years, and they're hoping that he can revamp this ramshackle offensive line to protect Dalton or Fields. It's not going to happen. So it's going to be Dalton's going to have to lock onto Robinson, get the ball out of his hands, and again hope Robinson gets by on on volume in fantasy terms. It lowers everyone else because I'm not sure Dalton's going to be going through his reads. Or just get out and give it to A-Rob and let's hope. But I just don't understand it. Matt Nagy was in Kansas City when they sat Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes sat his first year and won MVP in his second year. I think in his head, Matt Nagy has convinced himself that he was a good reason for that because he was there. Patrick Mahomes was good in his second season because Patrick Mahomes is very, very good. We don't know, but I think we can take a guess that maybe he would have been as good as Alex Smith in 2017. Alex Smith was great in 2017. Patrick Mahomes might have been better. We don't know. Andy Dalton was crap last year. He's going to be behind an offensive line this year that is crap. We know who Andy Dalton is. We know what Andy Dalton is. You are costing yourself your job.
I almost think that he doesn't think he's got a job. at some point in the decision making in Chicago. I don't know how they were allowed to make this pick. They almost fell into a starting quarterback. He seems to have done everything they would have wanted him to do, and they still don't want to play him under, as you quite rightly point out, some kind of, well, I did this once and it worked. Yeah, but that Alex Smith was much better than this Andy Dalton. That Kansas City team was infinitely better than this Chicago team.
And Andy Reid's a better coach than you.
And it was done by Andy Reid, not you. So I'm not really sure what the process is. Matt Nagy is not doing anything for the Andy Reid coaching tree right now.
Really isn't.
Let's move on to the Saints, who gave a job to Jameis Winston rather than Taysom Hill, which must have really disappointed their head coach, who must have done everything desperately to get Taysom Hill a job. However, him not being a very good quarterback meant that he didn't get it. Where do we stand on what that means for the skill players in New Orleans? And when I say skill players, I don't mean the cornerbacks playing the New Orleans Saints.
Potentially, it should give an uptick to the pass catchers, be it Marquez Callaway, Josh Johnson, is it, the wide receiver converted to tight end, Adam Troutman if he's healthy, because Jameis Winston is going to attempt more passes. I think if Jameis Winston plays, Taysom Hill isn't going to attempt as many passes as Jameis. I think people are being naive if they think Taysom Hill is going away, because Sean Payton was happy to take a Hall of Fame quarterback off the field for Taysom Hill, and we think he's not going to do the same for Jameis Winston. Yeah, that's somewhat naive. Jameis is probably going to carry some value as a starter because he's going to go deep, but when they get in the red zone, he's off the field.
Do you really think that often? Do you think that would almost play in some kind of crazed college system that no one's clearly aware of, that Jameis will get them from 20 to 20 and then, split out wide to allow Taysom Hill to do it, to run or something?
I think more snaps than people would like when the Saints are in the red zone, Jameis and Taysom will both be on the field at the same time. Whether that means Taysom's running it in, whether he's passing it himself, whether that means Winston's passing to Hill, I don't know. But Taysom Hill is going to be an annoyance to Jameis Winston all season. So it's hard to trust Jameis. And as we go on, we may see what this looks like on Sunday. We may see what the first iteration of it. But my antennae tells me this is bad, because Taysom Hill is Sean Payton's son.
Yeah.
Or if he isn't, then there's some relationship. And Sean Payton has made it the final push in his bid to ensure a Hall of Fame career is to turn Taysom Hill into something. And I don't think Jameis Winston being a better passer of the ball than Taysom Hill is going to alter this.
Right now, in leagues, on likes of Yahoo, NFL, the likes, what is Taysom Hill? What is a Taysom Hill?
He's a quarterback.
Okay,
and I think leagues like Yahoo are going to be reluctant to do what they did last year and give him tight end eligibility.
Of course.
Because they don't want, other people, other quarterbacks, because there's going to be some belter who'll send a complaint to Yahoo the first time Trey Lance runs in one inside the red zone with Garoppolo on the field, that Trey Lance should also have running back eligibility. Yahoo will just be like, we're not doing this. So, no. He's
a quarterback, and he caught some passes in some funky plays, will be their position. That's fine. The New England Patriots, Neil, made a decision at quarterback, and I don't think it was one that we all saw coming, especially at the start of the preseason, and that is Mac Jones, quarterback Alabama, now quarterback New England Patriots. Cam Newton released. I assume, although we don't know really, that he was told of the decision and maybe asked for his release, didn't want to be the backup. I don't think the playbook would be the same for Mac Jones and Cam Newton, so it doesn't make sense on him being the backup, and maybe he could try and get a job somewhere else. I'm fearful, Neil. I'm just going to put it out there now. I'm fearful that we attempted, everybody, to bury this franchise. We thought we'd done enough, And like, Jason in them flipping horror movies, they're back again. And they're going to be good again.
Yeah. Cam Newton was released because of his vaccination status. Let's not kid ourselves.
But I think you'll find that has not been confirmed. But I understand what you're saying because it's true.
Yeah, but yeah, it doesn't make sense for Cam Newton to be Mac Jones's backup because the offense would have to change if Cam Newton had to play instead of Mac Jones. Despite the obvious difference in talent levels now, in the past, and in the future between Cam Newton and Brian Hoyer, Brian Hoyer is probably a closer player to Mac Jones, so it makes more sense to back up Mac Jones.
What a career that man has had on limited talent. He's in the Chase Daniel school of get that money, man.
As Andrew Brandt would call him, a Hall of Famer in the business Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no. Where do we see the Pats offense going? Is this good news for all the pass catchers? And can someone please tell me which of these Pats tight ends that I should pick?
It's going to raise the floor of them again, but they're all ceiling cap because A, there's that many of them, and B, we saw when Belichick was trying to blood Tom Brady. What did they do? This is obviously back in 2001, but they ran the crap out the ball. They're still going to want to run the crap out the ball. The strength of this team is the offensive line and the defense. The defense isn't the unit it was 2 years ago, but it's still talented. Still has Stephon Gilmore, still has Dante Howard, players like this. The offensive line is Belichick built a bully because he knew the strength of his team, whoever the quarterback was, they were going to run the ball. So while we can assume that Mac Jones might dump off a few more passes to James White than Cam Newton would, he may feed Jacoby Myers a bit more. Aguilar may get more vertical shots. The tight ends are still going to get, be factors in the red zone. This team is going to be one of the top 3 teams in terms of run plays all year. And basically they're going to ease Mac Jones in and say, do no harm, facilitate, and we'll ramp it up as you get more and more comfortable. But for the starters, the people who are going to benefit the most are James White, who's never going to see a carry, but he's going to be in on third downs. So he's a PPR wide receiver, PPR running back 3 deep flex, and Damian Harris, who's now got no competition for those running back carries from his quarterback. But the fact that he's not going to see any passing work, I don't think, means he's a bit of a liability in PPR leagues. So again, he's a running back 2 who's going to be probably the leader in touchdowns, but will probably score more touchdowns than he'll have receptions.
That's a wild take in this in this NFL, as they like to say. Final one, Neil. Houston Texans in a surprise to absolutely no one decided they would go with Tyrod Taylor and tell Deshaun Watson, not for now, mate. Go and take a seat until we know what's going on.
Do you know, in terms of contract value for this season, the Houston Texans have the 4th most expensive roster in the NFL?
That doesn't make any sense. I heard the stat today. Did you know that the Cincinnati Bengals have the second most percentage of their cap on defense, and I couldn't name a defensive player on the Cincinnati Bengals. But it's a similar situation. How can you spend that much money and not be very good?
It baffles me. This is the Houston Texans are the rogue nation of the NFL. I cannot imagine there is an owner among the other 31 teams who enjoys doing business with the Texans other than to try and fleece them.
There's no one in this team who you'd pick on a fantasy team if you could help it, right?
Brampton Cooks, because there's no one else to catch passes and this team's going to play from behind. But are you starting him ahead of other people who could potentially challenge to be wide receiver 2s or even 1s if things break right? No. He's a wide receiver 3 tops. Someone you're probably going to look at in DFS because he's always going to be cheap. Even DraftKings are not going to have the gall to put him up among the highest priced because of who he plays for. So he's always going to be someone you consider. But the sensible thing to do would be say, look, thanks Tyrod, but we're going to see what we've got in Davis Mills. Thanks Brandon, but we're going to try and trade you, and we're going to feed Nico Collins because we need to see what we've got. But instead, what they will do is they will play Tyrod and they'll try and feed Brampton Cooks. And that helps no one. Doesn't help the franchise. Doesn't help Davis Mills, who I don't think is very good. But I've been wrong before. See Josh Allen for details. And I just think if there's a way to do something badly and incorrectly, the Houston Texans will find it in 2021 and hit it with alarming regularity.
And with a great amount of power. Okay, that's it on the quarterback news. Let's get on, Neil, with the final preview of the season, and we'll get on with the NFC West. Schedule for the NFC West, Neil. NFC North, AFC South, which is good news because that's a stinking division. One NFC East team, an NFC South team, and an AFC North team. First team, the Arizona Cardinals. Big question for the Arizona Cardinals, Neil. Is it make or break for Cliff with a K?
I think it has to be, because their offense has flashed. They've shown they can move the ball, but then they struggle to put touchdowns on the board. That's a problem, because in the modern NFL, you're not beating teams with field goals. You know, if you go up against, you know, one of the high-powered offenses, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Packers, or if you know, lo and behold, if you're going to make the Super Bowl, you're not beating the Kansas City Chiefs with threes. And they have shown that Cliff Kingsbury's big goal in life is to get in the red zone and set up chip shots for his kicker. Well, that's fabulous. Thanks for that. They have a somewhat limited passing inventory in the sense that they threw more wide receiver screens than any other team in the NFL. And in true air raid style, they like to keep their main receiver on one side of the field. That works against Division 2 college corners. It doesn't work in the NFL, where if they know DeAndre Hopkins is going to be on the left side of the offense, fine. We'll worry about everything else because he can't possibly go to him every time. So we'll bracket him when we have to, and we'll worry about the rest of it. The defense is a work in progress and has been for many years. Despite the fact that they still have talented players on it, they seem to like to make these players a bit unhappy. Chandler Jones isn't happy. Patrick Peterson left on, pissed off. Tyrann Mathieu was cut, obviously. Got to free agency when he did. They seem to like pissing off their defensive players. I wonder whether Steve Keim knows where all the bodies are buried, and that's why he's still got a job. But if this team doesn't take the leap and make the playoffs, then Cliff Kingsbury's gone and Keim's going with him because he keeps missing on quarterbacks. Now, I'm not saying Murray's the answer. He's shown a lot to be excited about. But then he's also shown that, given his size, we saw last year, he got the injury that you don't want a running quarterback to get. What fresh hell is this we're listening to? He got a shoulder injury, so he stopped running, so he became less effective. Well, that's a problem. But if you protected him a bit better, maybe it wouldn't be a problem. It's a team that has a few good pieces, but also has pieces on it on offense and defense that reinforce that people go to Arizona to wither and die. See JJ Watt and AJ Green for details. Watt still has something left in the tank, I have no doubt with that. AJ Green, seriously, after last year, it's just baffling. So they have DeAndre Hopkins, who obviously is a top-tier talent. His game is going to age remarkably well, you'd expect. But Christian Kirk's never done anything. AJ Green is a long way past his best. They don't have a tight end of consequence. And the running backs, Chase Edmonds is okay, but James Conner,
I do look at the Arizona Cardinals and think there's a few things wrong. One of them is, location, not Arizona. I mean the NFC West. It's not the best division to be in right now when you need to get some easy wins under your belt, because you're not getting them in the NFC West. You have to play Seattle twice, you have to play San Francisco twice, you have to play St. Louis twice, and I've heard on multiple podcasts, multiple shows, read multiple things where all three of them are winning 12 games according to multiple different people, right? That means they're good. So being Arizona is a problem there. It's weird that a guy who wasn't successful in college also doesn't seem to be successful in the NFL. And I just look at Cliff Kingsbury and I think, I like the concept of you, but then the actual live life of you hasn't worked, and I'm not sure it will work. I'm not sure on the roster, the defenses yet, whatever. I don't think JJ Watt getting them over the top in that kind of situation, similar to what you said, Neil, right? I just look and think, is this a team that's gonna challenge in this division? Never mind the conference, and I just say no. Neil, who's the fantasy darling on the Arizona Cardinals?
Well, the darling of this whole show should be me for the fact that I've left it this long to point out you said St. Louis.
Oh, did you? Damn.
The biggest value, we know this team is going to want to pass the ball because they're the horizontal raid offense, not the air raid. So Rondale Moore is wide receiver 69. This team does play a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, which means they're going to play 2 slot receivers. That's good, because that means we're going to see Christian Kirk on one side and Rondale Moore the other. If they could give a few of the wide receiver screens that they threw to Larry Fitzgerald last year to Rondale Moore, someone who's actually got a bit of burst and a bit of oomph about his game still, then maybe he could be someone who we are talking about as a wide receiver 3, who's currently going as like a wide receiver 6 or 7. But he's not someone that I'm desperate to get in draft. He's just someone that if he's there towards the back end of them, probably, the couple of rounds before I take my kicker and defense, I'll take a chance on
him. Over under for the Arizona Cardinals is wildly 8.5. Are they more likely to be discussed by draftniks in week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
I think they're not at all, because I think offensively they're going to be very exciting until, I say, they reach the scoring area, and then they're going to poo their collective pants and just kick field goals. The defense isn't good enough to meet them halfway. So I think they'll beat the teams they're supposed to beat, and they'll lose to teams they're supposed to lose against, and that is a quintessential middle-of-the-road team. Ergo, one that doesn't get talked about until they fire their coach.
The Arizona Cardinals are a bizarre team in terms of when they play, because the vast majority of their games are 9 p.m. UK time, but are never the game that would be on Fox or CBS as the main game, so therefore you never really watch it, because you also probably don't watch Red Zone in the late window, as there's only 2 games on, and you probably just watch the main game.
I watch Red Zone.
Scott's
I like Scott to dip in and out occasionally.
Well, okay. Then there's you and you. I usually drift over to going, oh my God, Trey and Joe and Troy are on again. Talking about Dallas, hopefully getting beat 45-27 by someone. I think they are a not at all team. They will win a lot. They will win games, as I do rate their quarterback. And obviously they have DeAndre Hopkins, but some of the, they got to play the Rams, San Francisco twice, as we've said. They have to play Green Bay, Indy, Tennessee. They're not easy games, some of these. So yeah, I can't see them doing anything in this division. So at best, they're not at all, and I'll definitely take the under 8.5. Next, Neil, the Los Angeles Rams, formerly St. Louis, and I don't mean formerly as in 10 minutes ago when I said it. The big question, does Matthew Stafford make this team elite again?
I think so, because if you look at the figures between the first 2 seasons of Goff and the second 2 seasons of Goff, the drop-off is phenomenal. So in 2017-2018, they averaged 31.4 points per game, 2.51 points per drive, 8.16 yards per pass attempt, 1.8 touchdowns, 0.62 interceptions per game. In 2019-20, the points dropped to 23.9, points per drive down to 1.9, yards per pass attempt 7.35, touchdowns 1.3, interceptions up to nearly 1 a game. Why did this happen? Well, because Jared Goff went down the toilet. So let's look at his figures in the 2 splits, shall we? He played 31 times in both of those 2 splits. So 17-18, 19-20. In 17-18, he averaged 33.5 pass attempts per game, completing 21.3 for 273 yards, 8.27 yards per attempt, and 1.9 touchdowns per game. In the last 2 seasons, the attempts were up to 38, completions up to 24.6, yardage to 276.8, so only up by 3 points only up by 3 yards per game on 5 more attempts. 7.41 yards per attempt, 1.3 touchdowns per game. Sean McVay got tired of holding his hand when he realised you're not getting better, you're just getting worse. So he shipped him off. And he brought in a quarterback who we know has all the arm talent in the world, has never had weapons except for the time he's always had weapons, which is something that people use to defend Matthew Stafford. Hang on, he had Megatron. Golden Tate was bloody good for a time. Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones were very good. Even Danny Amendola was a good wide receiver. Wasn't great, but he was good. But Matthew Stafford is going to do a hell of a lot more for all the pieces in this offense, because we know Robert Woods isn't only going to be getting 5 yards in duckers and then being expected to rack up yak. We know Cooper Kupp's going to get more than just the red zone work. We know the tight ends are going to get mixed in. It's going to elevate everyone. And Sean McVay was just fed up of looking like Sean McVay was fed up of doing a wonderful job, but everyone looking at it saying this offense isn't what it was, when he was still doing the best he could with the quarterback he'd lost faith in. So yeah, I think Matt Stafford's going to have a great year. Statistically won't be the best year of his career, because this is someone who has a 5,000 yard and 40 touchdown season. But 4,500, 25 to 30 touchdowns is certainly on the cards. The pieces are all there. The defense is arguably the best unit in the NFL. They've obviously lost their coordinator, so there's going to be a bit of a drop-off. But the talent is all there. This team is a Super Bowl team. It's in a Super Bowl window, and Matt Stafford gives them a better chance of reaching one than Jared Goff did.
I think it's tough to argue, but if you play devil's advocate, you know, as you said, Matthew Stafford's had elite talent in the past and never really won. He's had much worse defenses, that's for sure, and I think that's where the difference is here, is that, you know, this team's defense should be much better than basically any defense that Matthew Stafford has ever had. There's a couple in the mid 2000s, maybe late 2000s, when he had a decent defense in Detroit. Found something really weird out today about Detroit, though. The Rams, is that their new defensive coordinator is who, Neil?
Raheem Morris.
This is the first time Raheem Morris has ever been a defensive coordinator, and he's had 2 head coaching jobs. Because he went straight from DB coach in Tampa Bay to head coach. So never actually been a defensive coordinator before. Found that weird. Sean McVay started to be a little bit overshadowed by Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur. And I, as someone who listened to Sean McVay on the Flying Coach podcast, I know he didn't like that. That guy wants to be and thinks he is the smartest guy in the room. And there's been a lot of noise saying, you know, well, he couldn't get it to work with Jared Goff. So he's had enough of that. He put it in the bin, went to Cabo, and he signed Matthew Stafford. I think it's a big season for the LA Rams, because I know they have been multiple years, but this is an all-in year again, right? Another first-round draft pick thrown into the scrapyard to get a better toy. They need to win, and the issue is the same as the Arizona Cardinals, right? It's not going to be easy to win in this division. I think they're infinitely more talented than the Arizona Cardinals, but it's not easy to win in this division, so we shall see. But yeah, I think Matthew Stafford makes them better. I think it's hard to argue that he doesn't make them better, but we've never seen Matthew Stafford on a team like this, so you know, things to be proven and shown out.
Les Snead just wants a weekend off in April.
He loves.
He just doesn't want to do the draft. He wants to be somewhere else. So get rid of all the draft picks. Weekend off, folks. I'll pay. Let's go do something else.
Neil, who's the fantasy darling on the LA Rams?
Fantasy darling is someone who it appears that opinion has gone one way or the other over the course of his career, and that's Tyler Higbee. I say darling because tight end, is, as with most years, it's ridiculously top heavy. So you've got your Kelsey, your Kittle, your Waller. You've got the next generation there of Andrews, Hockenson, Pitts. And then after that, we get into the middle round tight ends who don't always tend to pay off their ADP. Tyler Higbee did show a couple of years ago with Jared Goff when he had 5 consecutive 100-yard games. He could be a tight end 1. His numbers when Gerald Everett have not been in the team are incredible. They're much higher than when Everett is on the field. Gerald Everett isn't there anymore. They have this young kid, Harris, who I think is something of a wide receiver tight end hybrid. He's not a threat. The other wide receivers, we've seen other offenses be prolific and include the tight end even when they have 2 or more wide receivers on their roster. Tyler Higbee at the moment is going as tight end 9, and I've seen him go a little bit earlier and I've seen him go a bit later. But at the moment, he's the cheapest way to get a piece of this passing attack, which we think is going to be better than it was last year.
Over under is 10.5, Neil. Multiple primetime games, including the first Sunday night against the Bears. They also play Seattle, San Francisco, Arizona, and Tennessee, all primetime. So if you're an LA Rams fan, be prepared to stay up late, get them coffees in, get that additional sugar into your system. Are the Rams more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 17 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
It's definitely a Week 17, between Week 17 and Super Bowl, because I think they're going to be in contention in this division. And then obviously if they get into the playoffs, they've shown they can go on the road and win. They won in Seattle last year. Things didn't go right for them against Green Bay, but as I said, that was with Jared Goff. They were limited on offense. I'm not going to say Super Bowl because of a team we're going to come to. But this is definitely a team that, if things broke right for them, would be in with a shout of the Super Bowl.
Neil firmly saying that Kyle Shanahan is a better coach than Sean McVay, and I'll be telling Sean. I think they're in Week 18. I think they're a playoff team. I think you've got a great chance of getting 3 playoff teams from this division, to be honest. 10.5 is an interesting number. I think they'd probably just go over maybe 11, but playing the other 2 teams who I think will be playoff teams and probably splitting means there's not much room for losses anywhere else. But yeah, I see this as a playoff team. I'm not sure I see it as a Super Bowl team. But at the moment in the NFC, I'm not 100% sure I know who I do see in that position, given struggles in Green Bay and on the offensive line, and with the exception of Tampa Bay, I just don't see anybody getting close to Tampa. So yeah, Week 18, and we'll see where they get to there. Next team is the San Francisco 49ers. The big question for the San Francisco 49ers is, Neil, when would you go to Trey Lance?
I'll go to Trey Lance when Trey Lance shows he can be better than Jimmy Garoppolo at all aspects of the quarterback position. And until Kyle Shanahan thinks he is, Trey Lance is a package player. If Kyle Shanahan thinks he's adequate and up to it in Week 2, he'll start Week 2. If he thinks it's 2022, it'll be 2022. Jimmy Garoppolo is a much derided figure. But let's forget, he's one overthrown pass away from winning the Super Bowl. Let's not kid ourselves. One overthrown pass away from winning the Super Bowl. And then so many other narratives change. If you look at the 49ers stats over the last 3 seasons when Jimmy Garoppolo has played and Jimmy Garoppolo has not played, again, you see how much better this offense is when he has been the quarterback. And this isn't just, they're a little bit better, but Nick Mullins is just as effective. Because in 25 games with Garoppolo, they averaged 28.2 points, 2.4 points per drive, 8.5 yards per attempt, 1.7 touchdowns and 0.8 interceptions. Garoppolo can often be careful to a fault. The 23 games without Garoppolo, it's 23 points per game. Sorry, it's 21.4 points per game. It's 1.8 points per drive, 7.93 yards per attempt, so not bad. Just a little bit of a drop-off from Garoppolo. 1.6 passing touchdowns per game. Again, just a slight downtick. 1.2 interceptions per game. Kyle Shanahan wants someone to execute his offense. Jimmy Garoppolo executes his offense. Trey Lance adds another aspect to the offense. But until he can do all the stuff that Kyle Shanahan wants his quarterback to do, as well as what Lance can do, he's just going to be a part-time player. But I don't think it's going to matter, because it's just going to be a nice problem to have, because Jesus Christ, this is a cakewalk schedule.
What does Kyle Shanahan want his quarterback to do is a very interesting question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's run college run schemes that no one can stop on any single play, like you're playing flipping Navy or something, then Trey Lance is your man. Because if you've seen some of the plays they've run in pre-season, it's absolutely frightening. I have zero idea how you stop the 49ers on offense with Lance in. Garoppolo obviously takes that away. He ain't running anywhere apart from maybe to the bench. Neil quite rightly points out that he was an overthrown pass away from winning the Super Bowl. He also wasn't very good in that game, but we'll looks like we're glossing over that piece of information.
Patrick Mahomes was poor for 3 quarters.
They have won when he has played, and therefore he understands what Kyle Shanahan wants as his quarterback. It is borrowed time though. This is a ticking clock, and at some point he will pull the trigger. Neil mentioned cakewalk schedule, which we will come on to, but it's not a cakewalk schedule weeks 3 and 4, and if they're 2-2 after those weeks, I think they go to Lance in week 5 at Arizona.
It's going to be ridiculously hard for even Shanahan to justify benching Garoppolo if he has attempted 100 passes in those first 4 games total. If they've been able to lean on the ground game and sprinkle in a bit of Lance, if they're 3-1, then yeah, Garoppolo's keeping the gig. If they're 2-2, as I say, then maybe it depends on what Garoppolo does.
Depends what they do with 2-2. Even in theory, it depends what they do with 3-1, right? But yeah. I agree with what you're saying. It's not. Shanahan wants to play with the new shiny toy. He's that kind of offensive coordinator. Although Trey Lance and Robert Griffin III are very different players, that different skill set that was completely different to what he'd seen before or used before in previous quarterbacks is something that Kyle Shanahan likes. So I think the sooner he can get him in, the better for him. But he's not going to jeopardise a winning season on a very good roster that, if it can stay fit this year, has a chance to go pretty far in the playoffs. It's
the thing that Lance comes in and makes every aspect of that run game more dangerous. It's already dangerous. It's a Kyle Shanahan run scheme. I think that's been quite effective.
I believe
the NFL.
I believe so.
So if you then throw in, okay, well, we're not playing with 10 men on this run scheme. You have to count for 11, and you don't know, is he going to carry it himself or is he going to hand off? He's going to make you wrong. That's what Shanahan wants in the type of quarterback that Trey Lance is. He's someone who's going to make you wrong whatever you do, as long as he makes the right read. But it might be a case of they're going to have games where it's like, we don't need to be that clever. We can just run at you 30, 40, 50 times a game and we'll beat you because you can't stop us. We'll keep the tricks for when for when the important guests come, and that's when we'll get the goodies out. That's when we'll use the good china. That's when we'll take the plastic covering off the couch in the back room. But when we're playing Detroit or the Eagles, we'll just beat you. We don't need to fox you. We'll just beat you.
Fantasy darling for the 49ers, Neil.
Fantasy darling is, for me, Trey Sermon, because I think it's established that Raheem Mostert, like Jimmy Garoppolo, is not going away, but also is probably on a slightly shortened leash because he's shown he can't be relied upon to play a full slate of games. 17-game schedule. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how teams manage their players, not just the skill players, but the quarterback, their linemen. I think it's going to be very interesting in games where they think, we've got an extra game. Maybe if this game's gone out of hand one way or the other, maybe we start seeing some more subs rotate in. But what we have is Raheem Mostert is a speed guy. He's your home run hitter. But Trey Sermon is probably more built to be we want to give you the base carries, as it were. So, the goal line work, the work between the 20s and then they can mix in Mostert when they want the big play, grind them down. So I think, but we have seen in the past that when Kyle Shanahan does find a running back that he falls in love with, they get all the work. We saw it with Freddie Morris. We saw it with Steve Slayton in Houston. We saw it with Devonta Freeman. Because people forget in that breakout season that Freeman had in 2015, he wasn't the starter in week 1. He was Tevin Coleman's backup. But Coleman got injured and Freeman seized the job. So Shanahan said, no, we'll run with you. Sermon could have that type of impact that he shows, no, you can trust me. He's never going to get 300 carries a game because, say, Shanahan's going to sprinkle in the other running backs. But there's a potential where Sermon is going in drafts that you could get someone who'll frustrate you, but also he's going to have games where he'll get the bulk of the carries, and if he does that and he has the touchdown upside, he's someone who's going to be a running back 2 at least more weeks than he's not.
Over-under for the San Francisco 49ers is 10. It's actually less than the Rams. More likely to discuss by Draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all, Neil?
This is your NFC representatives in the Super Bowl. I don't know who'll be starting a quarterback when that comes. This is the team that's going back to the Super Bowl.
Now, is that because they got a 4th place schedule, and because they got a 4th place schedule, they play teams such as the Detroit Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles, and they obviously play the Cardinals twice, and they play the Bears, they play Jacksonville, they play the Bengals, they play Atlanta, they play Houston.
The 4th place schedule is a fantastic piece. It's a talented team that has had, speaking as an Eagles fan, you do not get any sympathy from me for this, they have had horrible injury luck. Obscene injury luck. The players are back fit and healthy. Kyle Shanahan is a top 3 offensive play caller and designer in the NFL. The defense is nasty and has playmakers on all levels. I don't think teams will want to go there because Kyle Shanahan is going to be the type of offensive coach that defensive coaches are going to think, I don't know how we stop it. If what they want to do, as you said, if they do what they want to do, I don't know how you are able to consistently stop it. And then if you have to keep passing on them, they'll kick the crap out of you. So this is the Super Bowl team.
I won't go as far as Super Bowl because they'd have to play Tampa Bay. I do find it interesting on whether they could get the number 1 seed based on the schedule. But it's a tough division. I think they make the playoffs. I'm struggling to pick a winner of the division. I think based on schedule, you probably will go San Francisco. So they are a Week 18 team, possibly challenging Tampa Bay to get a bye, which may mean then they are Super Bowl discussion worthy. Final team in this division, Neil. Don't know if we just want to recap the same stuff that we say every year about the Seattle Seahawks, but we won't. The big question, which must be the same question we've asked every year, in some way, shape or form, does a cool new offensive coordinator make any difference to how the Seattle Seahawks play offense? Neil's holding up a piece of paper that says in capital letters, Pete Carroll. Now, my understanding is that Pete Carroll isn't the offensive coordinator, but I'm sure Neil's going to explain to me why the offensive coordinator doesn't matter in Seattle.
Because we know the offensive coordinator in Seattle has such latitude and autonomy that if they want to operate the offense they were brought in to operate, and that involves passing the ball a bit more even when it's working, Pete Dinosaur Carroll will put a stop to it. I'm terribly sorry. It's what it is. Shane Waldron, he's another one of these. He's from the McVay, Shanahan, LaFleur tree, so they're going to do this and be all this, and it'll be great for Russell Wilson. That's great. And the one game it stops working, it'll be over, and we're going to run up the gut. We're going to pay Russell Wilson top-end quarterback money to hand the ball off to Chris Carson 25 times. Congratulations. Yet again, you have not realised the Legion of Boom are gone. Your front 4 is gone. Your quarterback, your team has a couple of excellent linebackers. You have a safety who is being paid like a linebacker because that's what he is. He does not cover people. He does not impact the passing game. Okay, he does. He blitzes. You have a quarterback whose prime is being squandered because you would rather give the ball to Chris Bloody Carson. Yeah, you've got probably the best wide receiver tandem in the NFC. I think on paper you could argue it certainly is, but your mindset is mired and trapped in the latter years of the 20th century when we are now 2 decades into the 21st. And I ranted about this last year, and people thought, it looked like I was going to be proved stupidly wrong. What happened? The 8-8 mentality of this team reared its head again. That even though they finished was at 12-4, and Russell Wilson had nearly 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, it could have been so much more. Because you are allowed to blow teams out. You don't have to win games in the fourth quarter, Pete. But no, you still sit there masticating like a cow as you chew and chew and chew and chew, as your defense cannot stop a runny cold, a runny nose, as teams continue to keep games close, and you rely on Russell Wilson to make miracles happen when he could just do excellent things in the first 3 quarters of a game. I'm not being funny. Russell Wilson's agent came out and said he's happy in Seattle, but if he was going to be traded, here's the 3 teams you'd go to. Yeah, that's someone who wants to be here.
I love that. I did love that. I love that.
I'm very happy with my wife, but here's 3 women I'd sleep with if I had the chance. That's it. I don't understand this. Yeah, we've seen it before. The new coordinators and whatnot. Yeah, bollocks. This team is Arsenal. This is an Arsenal mentality. You just want to get there and think that's enough. You don't want to win the Super Bowl. You just want to make the playoffs.
That is.
You're not winners.
There's a lot to unpack there. And for those who don't understand how much of an offensive attack that is on the Seattle Seahawks, calling them Arsenal, then I can't really help you. Elephant in the room here is that, they probably lost last season not because of negative play calling, but bad quarterback play. I agree with Neil in most facets, but I support the Washington football team. So I'm going to give you the record of the Seattle Seahawks since 2012. 11-5, 13-3, 12-4, 10-6, 10-5-1, 9-7, 10-6, 11-5, 12-4. I understand completely what Neil is saying here. That he believes that they haven't done everything in their power to win. And this is a tough concept because I'm not sure if Neil's definition is the same. So in their heads, their issue was on defense, and they gave away 2 draft picks for a defensive player.
Without a contract already agreed.
Yeah, I know. Whoa there. The Los Angeles Rams thought their issue was a quarterback and gave away multiple draft picks for a 37-year-old quarterback who's never won ever. Both of these can be spun in the same way, right? They won 12-4 last year, and for the last half of the season, their quarterback was not very good. They didn't run it 25 times because Pete Carroll decreed it so. They threw it 25 times. They ran it 25 times because their quarterback kept on throwing it to the other team, and Pete, as a defensive coach, decided that he was having no more of that nonsense. Now, I like Russell Wilson as a player, but he has to admit that he wasn't good at the end of the year. They went 12-4 and then got beaten in the playoffs. It's not good enough. I don't think anyone's suggesting that it is. Well, the problem is there's teams who bite their hands off at 12-4 and haven't got that level of talent. Is it easy to win the Super Bowl? No, it is not. Do I believe they do everything in their power to win? I do, yes. Do I believe that their head coach's mentality gets in the way at certain points? Absolutely. It's almost undeniable. But also, they consistently win 10 games every year. He's the head coach. And they've won a Super Bowl. Should they have won another one? Yeah. But you know what? Ironically enough, they fucking threw it instead of running, and they didn't win. It's just one of them things. If he has 2 Super Bowls, would it make everybody feel better? I don't know. He's like 90 years of age and is fitter than me and you. I'm on the side of Pete here, fast and loose Pete, and you know I am. And I understand the concerns, but they're going to win 10 games again this year, and like, what do you want? Do you know what I mean? And if you love NFL, and you love red zone, and you love those last 2 minutes of a game, you know and I know, with 2 minutes and less to go in a game, regardless of who Seattle are playing, whether they're playing the monsters from Space Jam or they're playing the Bad News Bears, they're in a 2-point game and they've got the ball and they're driving to win, because that's how every single Seattle Seahawks game goes.
I just think they just want to get there.
Calling them Arsenal was one of the lowest blows ever, but I understand the concept.
Man sitting in front of billboards saying "Prove me wrong" gif. When they win more than one playoff game in a season,
okay.
I'll agree that they're serious about winning the Super Bowl.
That's fine.
Until then, this powder is staying dry, I assure you.
Understand. Fancy darling on the Seattle Seahawks, Neil.
Ironically, Gerald Everett, the man who came from the Rams, with his former tight end coach, who's teams realise, so you're just going to pass deep to Lockett and Metcalf. Okay, we'll play 2 deep safeties. Oh, it's okay, Russell target everyone else over the middle. Oh, look, it's the very old Greg Olsen, or it's Will Disley, or it's Jacob Hollister. Yeah, we fear them. Whereas someone like Gerald Everett is a very, very athletic tight end. Always been a big fan of Gerald Everett. He's one of my successes, in the sense that was someone I thought would be good. He has flashed, so he has been good. He's just never been consistent. Now he is probably the best show in town. He's likely to be the third choice in that passing game, which, if it is as good as people seem to think it is, where Gerald Everett is going at the moment, I think a lot of drafts he's not going to be drafted. So if you take the approach that our friend Rotopat is advocating of, you don't get an early round tight end, you don't get one of the big 3, take 2 late round ones, so maybe get an Everett and a Jarwin. He's someone who could help. He's not a priority person. He's probably someone who, as the weeks go on, if he starts to put the numbers up, he'll be in the streaming conversation, and then maybe he's an every week starter. But if you want the pieces of this offense, you're going to have to pay for them.
Over under for the Seattle Seahawks is 9.5. Draft Knicks in week 18 in the Super Bowl, or not at all, Neil?
Not at all. Arsenal, middle of the road team, no one cares.
Week 1, around 8:50, Scott Hansel will send us over to Indianapolis as Russell Wilson has the ball down 4, trying to drive and win the game in Indianapolis. That's how it goes. I think this is a playoff team. Do you know why I think that? Because they're always a playoff team, as Neil quite rightly pointed out. Just like the Arsenal used to make the Champions League, Seattle make the playoffs. So I see this as a playoff team. They got a really interesting playing Washington on a Monday Night Football that I'm not looking forward to whatsoever. But yeah, maybe it's a rehearsal for when Russell moves to Washington. Neil, you are going, I assume, 49ers, Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals.
I am.
I have no idea. I'm going to go 49ers based on schedule. I'm going to say the Rams and the Seahawks have the exact same record, and both make the playoffs, probably at 11-6. And then that would make the 49ers possibly 12-5. And the Arizona Cardinals are looking for a new head coach.
Plenty of failed college coaches to pick from.
Lots of them, Neil. Lots of them. Neil.
Chip Kelly sounds good.
Oh God, he's won 2 games. The game's back on. And Neil, we will be back later in the week to preview week 1 from a fantasy point of view. Until then, where can people catch you?
Until then, not very. You'll be lucky to catch me, as I haven't written anything yet. I will have at some point my first tight end streaming article of the year for Rotoviz. I always enjoy doing that. It's my thing. They let me do it. Bless them. I'll also be doing my scouting blurb for the Chargers players for 4for4 football. And when the season starts, I'll do my weekly Super Bowl odds tracker for Number Fire. So haven't written any of it yet. Haven't done a damn thing. So by the time you hear us again, I will have lost many hours of sleep scribbling like hell to finish them. But if you want to follow me on Twitter at Endutton13, please do. And I haven't had a Twitter beef with anyone, so I think I'd like to try it. So if anyone wants to throw me a bone that way, why not?
In pure Scouse tone, lad, you just called Seattle Arsenal, so I'm sure someone will be coming for me. I am at Mainz7, combined with at waxing_lyrical. We are on the precipice of the NFL season, and next time we talk, we'll be talking about actual games and actual things we think you should do in fantasy. Until then, these top guys are out.